Converted Man here, and we're going to be looking at why atheism requires faith by Sydney Baptist Church. Oh, good. Tu quoque. My favorite fallacy. Anyways, alright, so here we go.
Today I want to talk to you guys about the relationship between atheism and faith. And in a previous video I kind of talked about this a little bit, claiming that atheism actually requires faith. But in the comment section of that video I got hundreds and hundreds of negative comments claiming I was so ignorant of the subject. And by the way, I have multiple master's degrees in theology.
Okay. By multiple he actually means two, but I guess that's multiple. I mean, that's not relevant though. Whatever degrees you might have in theology doesn't negate that you might be ignorant of this. That's an appeal to the wrong authority, by the way. Linguist would be something that I'd be interested in. If you had a degree in linguistics, then maybe you could comment on how words, the origin, how they're utilized, how we use them today, natural language issues, and so on. So, yeah, your degrees don't mean that you're not ignorant. You are ignorant. But regardless, what do you mean by faith? Is faith good or bad? You're not going to tell us what faith means, then what are you doing other than a tu quoque? Okay, anyways.
Which deals with the subject of theism and atheism, things like that. So I'm not ignorant, I'm very educated. But anyways, they would claim that it's just so...
Also, no, theology doesn't deal with atheism, just deals with a particular subset of theology. You know, whatever your belief is, a Christian. So, no. Anyways.
Terrible for me to even suggest that atheism requires faith. So this kind of begs two different questions. First off, why did they claim that atheism doesn't require faith? And secondly, why did I claim that atheism does require...
Well, it because it doesn't. And why you claim it does, I guess because you're an apologist. Well, it depends what you mean by faith, though. That's the question I want answered first is, what do you mean by faith? Is faith good or bad? What does it mean to you? What do you mean by this word?
Require faith. So I don't really want to misrepresent them, so I'll kind of give you a little bit of a glimpse into what I was saying or how our conversations went. And basically, as I conversed with them in the comment section, I would say things like, atheism is the belief that God doesn't exist, right? Faith requires belief. So by claiming atheism is the belief, I was claiming atheism is the faith that God doesn't exist.
Okay. Do beliefs require faith? Depends what you mean by belief. So this is another problem of definition of words. And here you're making a claim that all beliefs require faith. Well, prove that's true. And again, you would have to say what faith is, which you're not doing. Also, it's not quite correct. This is again typical apologist trope that we've seen over and over again. The lack of nuance. A lot of people have this huge hang-up with the word atheist. It must mean X. That's not how natural language works. It's just not. The word has evolved over time. There are two ways of using the word atheist, and perhaps more now. But the two ways is without God. That's the Latin. A without theos. Theo is God, essentially. So without God. Okay. Now that doesn't mean it might mean you think there's no God. Might mean you think that you don't believe in God. Might mean you lack a belief in God. You're not. It might mean a lot of things. So this is not necessarily how people phrase their atheism. But he's going to pretend it is.
But they say, no, that's not true. Atheism is not the belief, it's the absence of the belief. So it's not that they believe God doesn't exist, it's that they don't believe God exists. So they're basically taking the word believe out of the equation by saying they don't believe. They're saying they don't have faith that God exists, things like that. So with that in mind, it makes a lot of sense until you realize that they're just rephrasing the statement to mean the exact same thing. And theists could do the same thing, right? Because a theist could say, it's not that I believe that God exists, it's that I don't believe that God doesn't exist.
Actually, I have heard apologists try this trope by rephrasing their idea in a way that they think will then let them off the hook in regards to burden of proof. So let's go a little bit into that. Hold on a moment. So the burden of proof is on whoever makes the positive claim. That's it. Whoever makes the claim, usually positive claim. I mean, I guess it could be a negative claim, but that's usually not done. But regardless, whoever makes the claim has the burden of proof. Okay, so what's the claim? Okay, so if the claim is there is a God, and then you incur the burden of proof. There is, however, zero requirement for you to shoulder a burden for belief statements. This is how logic functions. When someone says, I believe X, that's it. There is no burden. They believe that. Maybe they're lying. Maybe they don't really believe that, but I don't. The social contract suggests, makes it that I assume that they're telling the truth unless I have proof of guilt. So if somebody says I believe whatever, doesn't matter. They don't have any burden at all in regards to that. They don't have to demonstrate that they believe in it, nor do they have to demonstrate that the thing that they believe in is real or true or anything of that nature. Similarly, if somebody says, I don't believe X, they have absolutely no burden at all to provide any sort of proof for that idea. That's just how it is. That is how it functions. Belief statements have zero burden of proof. So, if all you're saying is that you believe there's a God or you believe that there isn't a God, then you have no burden of proof. So what some apologists have attempted to do is say, well, I don't there is no there I don't believe or there is no not God, and so because I've made a negative claim, I don't acquire the burden of proof. But no, it's not how that works. Like I said, positive claims incur the burden of proof. Negative claims usually, yes, they do have some burden of proof to some degree, but usually you don't make a negative claim. It's very bizarre. It's like it's hard to really pin down what a negative claim would be in the first place. But something like leprechauns don't exist. Well, what's the proof of that? Well, what's the proof that where do you go from there? So usually it's viewed as the positive claim, but regardless of that, it's kind of debatable to some extent. There's debate within logic about that sort of thing. But however you attempt to phrase it or rephrase it, if you say that a thing is, then you have to show that it is. If you say that a thing is not, then yeah, you're gonna have to argue for it, which is different than showing. There's a difference between that because how can you show that something isn't? So this goes into the falsification of any given idea or phenomenon. So if I say there are no leprechauns, and I go, well, look, I don't, I looked around myself, I saw no leprechauns, I looked in the fossil records, I found no leprechauns there, and so therefore I've concluded, that there are no leprechauns. And the other person that believes in leprechauns could, of course, say, well, just because we haven't found evidence, that doesn't mean that there is no evidence. Maybe their bones don't decay really quickly, so they don't leave any evidence at all. Well, isn't that convenient? But now you have the burden of proof to show that that's true. Anyways.
Right? You can rephrase the statement and communicate the exact same thing. And that's exactly what they were doing. So why do I believe that atheists do have faith? Well, what is required for faith? There's possibilities. You have to have possibilities. If there's no other possibility, then it doesn't take faith to believe something. But if there is multiple possibilities, then it does require faith. So the reason why theism requires faith is because theists say God exists, right? That's a possibility. But there's also a possibility that God doesn't exist. Of course, a theist doesn't believe that God doesn't exist, but they do believe that God does exist, but they understand that there's still the possibility that maybe God doesn't exist.
Okay, so a couple claims here made is if there's more than one possibility, then this means that faith is necessary to have one position or the other, and it depends what the bleep you mean by faith. I have no idea what he means by faith. I do not know. He did not explain it in the description. There's a syllogism for me to eat. Oh, I will definitely do that. When it's not, of course, it's not constructed. Let's see. Nope. And he says the reason that faith requires multiple possibilities is because there's one possibility and a person cannot hold to that without faith simply because there's no other possibilities. Well, there's a problem with that. How would you know that there aren't other possibilities? You would never be able to know that. So then everything would always require faith. They're like, well, 1 + 1 is 2. Well, there might be another possibility. You don't know. Oh, but no, that's the only answer. All that's faith because you think that that's it's ridiculous. So I don't know what the bleep you mean by faith. And okay, so let's go to the so he didn't clarify that. Let's go to this false dichotomy. And yes, it is a false dichotomy. All right. He says possibility 1, God exists. Possibility 2, God doesn't exist. No. There is a third option. God once existed and then died to make the universe. Let's say that God, whatever that is, once was and then exploded itself in order to make the universe. So God did exist, but now it doesn't. There you go. So you see that's, and you say, well, then that means God doesn't exist. Well, but God did exist at one point. So it's another possibility, isn't it? Yeah, well, anyways. As far as these being possibilities, well, in order for something to be possible, you have to demonstrate that it's even a thing in the first place. So it is not possible to roll the number 7 on a die that doesn't contain the number 7 on it. It only contains 1 through 6. So you can't do it. It's not possible. So in order to say that something is even possible, you have to then demonstrate that it is a thing in the first place. It's like, well, it's possible that ghosts exist. Well, how do you know that? How do you determine possibility without showing that the thing is a thing in the first place? Okay, back to his quoque. It's a hard word to say.
So when a theist says God does exist, they hold to that by faith simply because there's a possibility that he doesn't exist. But it goes both ways, ladies and gents. For atheists to claim that there is no God, which again, if you say you believe there is no God or you don't believe that there is a God, you're still holding to the possibility that there is no God, but you hold to that possibility by faith simply because there is another possibility. So if there was no other possibility, that wouldn't require faith. So if theism requires faith, then so does atheism, because they're on opposite sides of the possibilities, and both are possibilities, right? God may exist, God may not exist.
No, but again, it depends. Again, more than a tu quoque, which is you as well. So two, I usually pronounced it as tu q, but it's tu quoque. So this is you as well. So, somebody is smoking and says it's bad to smoke, and you say, well, but you're a smoker. It's like, well, yeah, but yeah, you're doing it, so it's okay if I do it, And this is the apologetic attempt to make everything equal. Non-belief in God is what's known as the null hypothesis. People, apologists hate this, but if you were never told about God, uh, then it's very unlikely that you would come to think that there's a God. Now, I say that with a huge asterisk because obviously somebody somewhere came up with God, but it wasn't spontaneously. It was probably a very simplistic idea. If you go back in history and you look at other gods, other spirits, and things that people believed in, you can see that it's a matter of pattern seeking and pattern recognition. There's how do we explain the disease? Well, the spirits are unhappy. They don't know. The shaman has no idea, but they're they have to do something to try to help. And so, some of the medicine they have actually does work, a lot of it doesn't. And by mixing in essentially the placebo effect of this is a shaman and he's going to, or she's going to fix you, can add to your own belief that you will get better, and that might help you actually get better. I've said that I think that you could imagine a person walking the plains of Africa and suddenly gets hit in the head by a rock and immediately looks around looking for who threw the rock. Because to him, well, people throw rocks. Sometimes animals do, monkeys do, maybe, but usually it's a person who looks around, doesn't see anybody, nothing around for miles, no trees, no anything, just grass, just nothing. And so he goes back to his tribe and says, this rock came from the sky, and I think there's somebody up there throwing rocks, and so before you know it, you have a rock throwing deity that the tribe believes in to explain this. And well, how did the rock got there? Well, in reality, a volcano very far away erupted and flung a rock very far. But the guy has no way of knowing that. Anyway, so the null hypothesis is you don't believe in the thing at first, and you must be introduced to the concept, or the concept must generate out of some sort of pattern seeking, but that takes time. So I don't think that somebody could just spontaneously come up with a fully formed God per se. Although maybe they could, and this is we're talking about human nature, and human nature's weird. But of course, they wouldn't call it God if they've never encountered that. Who knows what they would call it. But I would say it. I don't know how rare that is, because unfortunately we don't have a control group of humans to see what would happen if nobody had heard about God, nobody knew anything about God, and all, and how would that work? The closest thing I could think of is maybe the Piana, I think it is Piana people, and it's this tribe that has nothing. They don't have a god. They don't have an origin story. They don't have creation myths. They're focused on the present. They're not really worried about the past. They have a system. It's like, did you see it? Did somebody saw it? Or did you hear about somebody saying that they saw it? So they are empiricists. They're empirical, people. If they're not interested, if you didn't hear it from somebody that saw the thing, then why talk about it, basically? So, and this apologist got deconverted by them because he realized that the story of Jesus was not universal. These guys had no room in their culture for Jesus. They just didn't. Anyways, so that's all that.
Of course, theists believe that he does. Atheists don't believe that he does, right? If you want to phrase it that way. But both communicate the same thing. One holds to the possibility that he exists. One holds to the possibility that he doesn't exist. Both hold to those possibilities by faith simply because there's another possibility. What about agnostics? Because I think there's a lot of confusion in the comment section because of this. Agnostic would be the person who says, I don't know, right?
Yeah, well, kind of. But you're getting agnostic sort of wrong, but whatever. I mean, and there's agnostic theist, and there's agnostic atheist, and then there's Gnostic atheist and Gnostic theist. So what are you going to do about those? And then there's me, skeptic. Deal with that. What are you going to do about skeptic? But according to you and your own idea, because there's more than one possibility, agnostics would also have to have faith. Even though they're not holding to either possibility, it doesn't matter because there's other possibilities other than I don't know. So therefore, agnostics have faith. Oops. Everybody has faith. Whee! But I guess it's better to be agnostic than an atheist. Does it really change anything though? You still haven't convinced me that there's a God, so what's the point of this? It's like, oh, I'd rather you call yourself agnostic. Okay, fine, I'm agnostic. Whatever, I don't care. And it's like that. Is that a victory for you? I don't get it.
He looks at the possibility that God doesn't exist, and he looks at the possibility that God does exist, and he says, I don't know which one it is. So they don't believe either one. So they're not holding to anything, either possibility. They're just saying, I don't know. So a theist has faith, an atheist has faith, an agnostic would not have faith in that particular situation. Faith is not an insult. I just said theists have faith, so why would atheists having faith be insulting?
Ah, yes. Well, I can't answer for everybody because this is a why question, so it goes to motive and uh, ideas and such. I view the word faith to be a belief without empirical evidence or a repeatable test or a valid and sound argument. If you don't have any of those things, then you have faith. You have a belief without three of the things that I know of that actually work as methodologies to find out if something is true. Maybe there's another option. If somebody wants to offer one, I'm willing to consider it. Nobody has yet, but I'm open to possibilities. So empirical evidence is visual evidence. Now you can visualize things with more than just your eyeballs. Obviously, you can have different machinery that can visualize it. You can, if you pour magnetic stuff dust onto paper with a magnet under it, you can visualize how the magnetic field is. There's ways to visualize different phenomenon uh, with different techniques and tools and methodology. Okay, if you don't have that, then at least have some sort of repeatable test. Why? Well, because we want to be able to test the idea and make sure that it's not just a trick of sleight of hand or something like this. We want to control the variables. We want it to be in controlled conditions, and we want to be able to do it more than once to make sure it's not just chance, that it's an actual thing. If you don't have that, I don't know what the bleep you could hope to have, but then maybe you might have a valid and sound argument. But I doubt it because in order for an argument to be sound, all the premises have to be true, and the format has to be correct. So the validness is just the format. The soundness is what really matters. I don't know why we say valid and sound. Why we just say sound then? But anyways, that's how it goes. And so, okay, if you had a valid and sound argument, then great. I'll look into the matter. You've convinced me to pay attention, to investigate. I don't think that you can do that without the other two, but I don't know. Maybe it's possible. So I leave it as an option. And because I love logic, and so I want to leave that as a possibility, and I don't want to be accused of scientism, which is a whole nother topic for a different day. But anyways, so why do I view faith as an insult? Because I don't have faith in this way. I don't have a belief without any evidence. In fact, I went looking for the evidence of my faith, which happened to be Christianity. I looked for the archaeological evidence, and I found pretty much diddly squat. I found nothing impressive, and I found way too many frauds, and that really soured me in many ways to it. I realized that there wasn't evidence. There was just tradition and assertion. And as I learned logic, that ruined apologetics for me because I realized these arguments suck. So I would be insulted by faith for that reason. So rather than just keep asserting that you're right and not listening to people, maybe, just maybe, ask them, why do you think it's an insult? Well, because I don't have it. But I asked what I always ask in these cases is faith good or bad? I think it's a very simple question to answer. Is faith good or bad? If it's good, then it's good that I have faith. If it's bad, then it's bad that I have faith. And then of course then I asked, what do you mean by faith? Okay. Let's look at the broken as bleep syllogism here. Premise one: having faith requires there are multiple possibilities. You would need another argument just for this. So, this is a bald assertion. You have to define faith. You have to explain what you mean by faith. Why? How do you? Where's the association causation for this? This requires its own argument. So this is kind of a formal fallacy as well, failure to give an argument, as well as a bald assertion, and also I would say no association causation. So premise two, God existing or God not existing are both possibilities. This is a potential false dichotomy. Nerdy rodent brought up, well, what if God has yet to come into existence? Maybe that's a possibility. What if there's more than one God? So there's other possibilities. Maybe there are several gods, or maybe God hasn't yet come into existence, or maybe it did exist and didn't, and now it doesn't, or maybe God sometimes exists only when you're looking at it. Like it's a Maybe God is in a box, and if you look in the box, your observation changes the state that God is in. So God is quantum, and if you observe it, you change the results, and then you can't see God when you're looking. God's only there when you're not looking, or something like that. What about that? But okay. Premise 3: theism holds that God exists. I think you should have put an S there, but regardless, okay. Not really a premise. You didn't really have to have this for a premise. Premise 4: atheism holds that God does not exist. Kind of. You could have combined these two, and you should have combined these two to have the correct formatting. So this is okay. Classical. Let me get this straight. Classical logic has two premises and a conclusion, not 3 or 4. So you should have combined both of these into one, and really you don't even necessarily need that as a thing. but yeah, this needs reformatting. So this is a malformat. So that's a formal fallacy. It doesn't negate the argument, but does make it completely broken. But okay, that's well, it does negate the argument in that sense, but it's not an informal fallacy. I would call this a half truth. I would also call this a half truth because some theism holds that gods exist. So you know, it should have indicated that. Anyways, conclusion. Therefore, both theism and atheism are faith simply because they stand on opposing possibilities. Well, that conclusion doesn't follow, and it's also this is not a accurate way to. This is just bad form. This is just broken. Okay, so. Uh, let's see if I can do this correctly for you. Okay, so X is Z. Z is P. T slash A is P. Therefore, T A is X. Yeah. Boy, it's broken. Because really you only need to say X is Z, Z is P, therefore Z is X. So to add in this extra step just is unnecessary. This just needs a complete rewrite to work. But this is the problem here is that's just what does that mean? Multiple possibilities. Why? What do you mean by this? This requires its own thing. So I'll fix it. Okay, if faith is a belief, then, or lack of a belief, then anyone with either of those has faith. Atheists, theists have a belief. Conclusion, therefore, they both have faith. There you go. Fix it for you. There you go. Oops. I don't know how to number things anymore. There you go. I fixed it for you. Made it hypothetical syllogism. This is correct and valid and sound. But all you have to do, of course, is say, well, I don't agree with P1 because it is a hypothetical syllogism, and then that erases all of it. So if you wanted it to not be a hypothetical syllogism, you'd have to find a way to change this into not an if statement, and that would require a whole separate argument, and that would be a whole thing in and of itself. But there you go, there you go, apologists. I fixed your stupid broken argument. If you want a valid and sound argument, here you go. That's it. All right. And where am I? Okay, we're back here. Okay, so and then the video just kind of ends there. So there's nothing, it just he trails off.
So obviously it's not meant to be an insult, but it is supposed to be more educational into letting people know why atheism requires faith and things like that. So hopefully that makes sense.
Well, no, it doesn't really make sense. But even if it did make sense, it's still not true. I mean, So. So yeah, the whole semantic problem, faith being used to mean something other than belief based on spiritual convictions or religious doctrine. Right. What do we mean by faith? What do you mean by this word faith? And because he didn't define faith, this is not an argument. And you know, I think that this is possibly true, that they want an even playing field. You have faith, I have faith, we both have faith. Okay, but yeah, so now we're on the same uh playing field. So we both have faith. Okay, great. So neither of us needs to prove anything then, right? Because that's how faith works. Oh, not even gonna highlight. Well, I'll highlight it, but I won't read it. I don't know. It's just this amuses me. Okay. Yes, yes. Again, yes. Um, it's yeah. I mean, isn't it kind of like, here's the label that I've chosen, and here's what I mean by it. Now, granted, that might not seem fair to some, but life isn't fair. Um, let's see, good or bad doesn't seem to have any epistemological value. So for the subscription, it's bad. Oh, the faith, right? Yeah, I mean, coming in late. What are you supposed to have faith in? Main gun, where the hell have you been? Oh man, everybody's showing up late. Um. Well, we both have faith. The atheists and theists both have faith. Main gun. So that's what you missed. So you have to rewind and listen to me rant about this. 5-minute video. Took me 36 minutes to eat it. Just once again, takes a long time to explain the truth, very short amount of time to tell a lie. Uh, what else can I say about this? I don't have faith in the way that I view the word faith. Um, I do not think that I would say Yahweh does not exist, cannot exist. It is incoherent. The Yahweh presented to us via the Bible is said to be all good, but does things that are not good. Uh, Said to be perfect, but doesn't act perfect. It makes promises and then seems to break them. It does things, arbitrary things that make no sense. It's demanding. It's jealous. It's angry. It's vengeful. It Then you have Jesus come along, and Jesus isn't really great as far as moral leaders go. He has wishy-washy things. He says things in parables so that other people can't understand them, that's kind of mean. I mean, why not just say it clearly? That's like, oh, they don't get to know. Only you guys get to know what I mean. Haha. Like, I mean, don't worry about eating. Don't worry about washing your hands. Yeah, Jesus says, don't. You don't gotta worry about washing your hands. All right. Yeah. Um. So, and then of course Jesus says none of the laws will be gone, and of course all the laws are gone except love yourself and blah blah blah, love your neighbor as yourself, love God, blah whatever, you know. But then of course, yeah, so it's all over the place. So, and of course, ultimately, if this being is posited as a logical being, however, a purely logical being, an ultimate logical being, well, an ultimately logical being would never use anything illogical ever. So if God is offering an afterlife for anything that you do, don't do, think, or don't think, then it is offering a bribe, and that is not a logical argument. If there's a hell, then it is doing an ad ballum. So it's an appeal to the stick, appeal to the cudgel, and a threat. And no logical being would do that. So the God of the Bible cannot be a logical being, and therefore I can't trust it even if it was real, because it's not using logic. And so there's no way for me to know that even if I did all the things it wanted me to do, that I'd still get in the good place because it's an incoherent, illogical being. So it's a trickster god. It's like Loki. You can't trust it. Okay. Other gods, however, I don't know. What do you got? What's the claim? What is it like? What do you think it is? But it boils down to what do you have to offer as far as proof? Not an argument, but proof. If you listen to the conversation I had with Zach, called Zach Attack, if you haven't, check it out. I think it's cool. But towards the end, or somewhere in the middle, I don't know where the hell it lands. Somewhere in the middle-ish, and I don't know, somewhere. But anyway, I got him to kind of admit that we have no example of a mind without a brain. And this is key because God is posited as a mind with no brain. God is brainless. The God of the Bible, the God of Christianity, has no brain. It has no anything. It's not made of stuff. Ask a theist what God is made of, and the best they can hope to answer is God's made out of God, or they'll say that's the wrong question to ask because God isn't material. But what is it? How does that function? How does that work? How does God have any thoughts if it's not made of things? What does it mean to not be made of anything? Then you literally said it doesn't exist. It's not made of anything. Well, what is that? That's nothing then. If you're not made of anything, then you don't exist. And of course, that all sets aside the problem of being outside space time because that means there's no when for you to do anything and there's no where for you to do anything. So that doesn't, uh, make any coherent uh, sense at all. Could still be true, but I doubt it. I mean, again, and if it is true, then logic's off the table and you can't trust it. But other God concepts, I'm open to the possibility. But I just don't. I haven't been given uh, anything other than bad arguments. I've not been given any empirical evidence, any repeatable test for it. All I've ever heard are bad arguments. Like, how do you explain this? Oh, the thing with Zach. Sorry, got off tangent. My brain went off tangent there. Okay, so I got him to admit that mind without body doesn't exist, but he said, but NDE is non-death experiencing. That until that's disproven, then there might be a possibility that mind can exist without body or without the brain. That's not how it works, though. Not for the skeptic. The skeptical minded is we don't believe something until there is proof of it. So it's not that, well, this NDE thing, that's weird. This person says that they could still hear and see things when their brain was dead. And even if we had a completely accurate documented report of this, which we don't, but even if we did, that would be an interesting thing, granted. And it might go to start to lead to some way to demonstrate that the mind can exist independently of the brain. But then there would be some way to detect that. When there'd be some mechanism at play. There'd be some way to visualize that in some coherent manner. And it would just be a matter of coming up with the technology to do that. So we don't have that. So we can't say, well, it could be. No, you don't know that it could be. You don't have any idea that it could be. What we do know is that after the person recovers, they're going to try to think of what happened to them. And what happens is one of two things. Either When they were when they were out of it, nothing happened. They come to, and that's it. They nothing happened. I don't remember. One moment I was here, the next moment I was here. That doesn't get put into papers. That doesn't get put into magazines. That doesn't get put on the news because it's not a story. That's the normal thing that usually happens. If you've ever fainted, one moment you're there, the next moment you're getting up and you're like, huh? It's a very weird sensation. One moment you're there, next moment you're not. You don't know that you're not. During the time that you're just not. I remember I got a minor surgery on my arm, and I remember counting down there, like count down, breathing in the gas or whatever it is, and looking at the doctor, and it's like, okay, count down. I'm like, okay, in my head, 100, 99, 98, and then all of a sudden I'm I'm in the room, a different room, and I'm like, I'm really hungry. Like, and I ate something, I threw up a little bit, then I felt better, and then I ate some more. I'm like, is that it? Are we done? Where's this? What? I wanted the thing that they removed from my arm. They already threw it away, so I didn't get to see it. But anyways, I wasn't there. That was it. I was one moment I was on the operating table, the next moment I was in the room, and there's absolutely nothing in between. I know stuff happened, but I wasn't there for it. So that is the normal experience. The abnormal experience is the person that reports remembering something happened. So maybe that idea is something they came up with just as they started to recover. And so it seems like a memory, or rather than something else. So there's naturalistic ways to explain this. Um, but when you say I have a possibility of demonstrating X, and man, these NDEs they look really promising. Yeah, well, but you haven't actually made them. You need to narrow down the definition of what you mean by NDE. You have to do the real science, and that takes work. And who's gonna do that work? You're gonna have to pay somebody to do that. Well, why haven't religious organizations worldwide sunk money into that? Why, yes, some prayer studies have been done, and I've been reading on the meta studies of prayer studies, and it boils down to prayer don't do diddly squat. The prayer is as effective, or maybe even less effective, than flipping a coin. And the things that prayer is attributed to helping are mundane as bleep. Oh, the person recovered from whatever the disease. Okay, yeah. So what happens when they don't? Then that's not a story, and so it doesn't appear to be any better than chance at all. In fact, in some cases, it's actually worse than chance. And the only time that prayer studies seem to go positive is when a purely Christian organization runs them. That should give you pause. Okay. So, reversed great drug for minor surgeries and anesthesia. I don't know what drug they use. I don't have any idea. So, what we would want, if this stuff is real, then it has to be demonstratable. But most apologists, when it comes to, well, Christians, I can't say all. Some are different. Other theologies might have different things. Islam doesn't have anything at all to offer, except I just saw an Islam video and I thought about doing a thing on it. But it was just, how do you explain that the moon is close to the Earth, and how do you explain this, and then I'm like, okay, so there's life, and that's improbable. Therefore, God. This argument again, whatever. improbable things happen, whatever. There's plenty of planets out there in the universe. This isn't proof of anything other than your ability to not understand how probability functions. And it's, yeah, that's the word he meant. I can't say that word. Anesthetic, whatever. The thing that puts you to sleep. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you go enough time without sleep, hallucinations start really bad for you, by the way, to go without sleep. So try not to do that. But the theists will say that when we ask for evidence, they will say you're making a category error because this is a supernatural thing, so there isn't natural evidence of it. Okay, then you can't say that there is evidence for it. You can't have it both ways, but they want to have it both ways. They go, here's evidence for God, and every time it's an argument, and it's a bad one, and it's one we've heard, and you go, that's not evidence. Like, well, but you can't have evidence because it's supernatural. Well, how do you know there's a thing called supernatural? Where's the evidence for that? There isn't. So it's magic. Maybe magic exists and is really real, but you see, you can't test magic because real magic happens, but if you try to test it, it goes away because it doesn't want you to know that it's real. Now you have an unfalsifiable idea, and that's not good, and that is a belief, and that's faith. I don't need faith. I have facts. As long as I have facts and you have faith, I will always, always be right, and you will always, always be wrong. Don't saddle me with faith. Not that the guy's gonna listen to any of this or respond to it. But anyways, that's it. That's all I got for now. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Please, after this is done being a thing, hit refresh a couple times on the video itself and then leave a comment. And like or dislike the video. Either way appears to help me in some way, shape, or form. Subscribe if you're not. And if you haven't bought my book yet, then what the bleep is wrong with you? Buy my book. And if you're like, what? You didn't know you had a book. Well, let me show you the book so you know what the book is, so you can buy it. It's called Caught Between an Infinite Hope and a Finite Despair. And there it is. It's on Amazon. There you go. Get it. It's cool. Well, I don't know. Maybe you might not think it's cool. But you have to read it, and then you tell me if you think it's cool or not. That'd be an interesting thing. Maybe somebody could make a video so I could get, maybe somebody could interview me about the book or something. That'd be cool. I need attention. I need fame. I need all the things. I want it. No, wait, what's going on? No, don't hit the button. I'm not done yet. No. Lobsters.